Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news and rumor video to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some injury updates from our past couple of days, some waiver updates, a small trade to talk about, plus we got some trade rumors involving Dallas, Carolina, New York Islanders, St. Louis Blues, and the Anaheim Ducks. And with all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Intent Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank all your support. We're now to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, and don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. Something else in this video. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. It really does help out the channel. So in today's video, as we usually do, we're doing another news and rumor video. I would start off with some signings from our past couple of days, but we have had no signings from our past couple of days. So I'm going to start off today's video with a couple of injury updates. There have been a couple. So first, Nico Hischier, who has missed the past 4 games and is out week to week for New Jersey, was placed in injury reserve with his upper body injuries, so that's a bad blow there for the Devils. We know that Hischier's going to be out for a couple of weeks, so him being placed in injury reserve is not too surprising. He'll be able to be activated after the Four Nations face-off if he's healthy, so good news there for the Devils that he should be not out for an overly long period of time, but still bad news to see him go down on injury reserve. For the Vegas Golden Knights, Tanner Pearson, who missed Tuesday's game with injury, was placed in injury reserve, so he's going to miss a couple of games for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a bad blow there for Vegas. Pearson's actually worked out quite well as a solid bottom 6-4, so interesting note there, but he's going to miss the next little while on IR. Well, William Karlsson, who's been out since January 20th with a lower body injury, was placed in long-term injury reserve and won't be back until after the Four Nations face-off. So a bad blow there for Vegas. Karlsson's been a solid third-line center there for the last couple of years for Vegas, so to see him go down with an injury is not overly great. Hopefully he'll be able to come back after the Four Nations face-off and look good, but still not overly great to see him be placed in long-term injury reserve. For San Jose, Dellandrea, who missed 4 games with upper body injury, was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Thursday, so really great news there. Dellandrea is a decent bottom 6 forward, so to see him be back with the Sharks is fantastic news. While Klim Kostin is skating in a non-contact jersey, but is still out due to his lower body injury, so good news to see a Kostin skating and could potentially be nearing a return after the Four Nations. And also good news to see a Dellandrea is back in the game action, so really great boost there for the Sharks. Toronto's Marner returned to game action after he missed 1 game with a lower body injury on Thursday, so really great stuff there for Marner to see him return to game action on Thursday, and good to see him miss too much time, as that's a big boost there for the Leafs top 6. While Anthony Stolarz, who had missed nearly 2 months with a knee injury, was active off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Thursday. So that is a huge boost. Stolarz at the start of the season was looking fantastic before going down with that injury. So to see the Leafs now have Stolarz and Woll tandem back in Toronto is fantastic news there for the Leafs goaltending. And also good to see that Marner's back. Chicago's Jason Dickinson left Wednesday's game with a high ankle sprain and will miss at least a few weeks. So I'm not sure if he'll be back just after the Four Nations or a little bit longer. But Dickinson is going to be out for a couple of weeks' time. So it's a bad blow there for the Hawks. This is a solid middle 6 forward. The Islanders had some Fasching, who had missed 13 games with upper body injury, was active for injury reserve and should return soon. He might have already returned, I'm not exactly sure, but Fasching had missed quite a bit of time, and he's now going to be back for the New York Islanders, so it's a really good bottom 6 forward that the Islanders now have back. Philadelphia's Owen Tippett, who has missed a few games with upper body injury, won't play again until after the Four Nations face-off, so bad blow there for the Flyers. Tippett's been a fantastic top 6 scoring forward for that team, so to see him be out for any length of time is an awful blow there, and hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time for Philadelphia. Sidney Crosby missed Friday's game due to an upper body injury in his day-to-day. There is some question as to whether he will be a part of the Four Nations Cup or not. There's a very likely chance he is a little bit more likely than Quinn Hughes due to the fact that he's on a lower end team, so very likely chance that Crosby still plays in the Four Nations, but he is dealing with an injury that's keeping him out of game action right now. St. Louis's Alex Texier, who missed Thursday's game with an illness, may be back on Saturday, so that could be a really big boost there for the Blues to get a solid bottom 6 forward back into the lineup. And Nashville's Adam Wilsby missed Friday's game action with a upper body injury and is day-to-day, so it's a bad blow there. Wilsby's actually fitting quite well as like a 6th, 7th defenseman, was a call-up option earlier in the year, so he's been a really good find there for the Predators, but it's bad news to see him be out for the next while. Probably won't also return until after the Four Nations. So interesting injury updates from our past couple days. Good to see guys like Fasching, Stolarz, Dellandrea, and Marner all return to game action. Hopefully they don't look too bad in their returns, but bad news to see guys like Hischier, Tippett, Crosby, and Wilsby all be out with injuries, and hopefully they won't be out for an overly long period of time and can return right after the Four Nations. But those are some interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of waiver updates. We saw a handful of waiver updates from our past few days. Back over on Thursday, we saw 1 player replaced on waivers, and that was recently signed goalie Brendan Halverson in Tampa. We talked about how Halverson was signed by the Tampa Bay Lightning to give them some more goaltending depth with guys like Johansson and Vasilevsky out recently. He had dressed for a couple of games, was sort of on their roster for a few games, but the Bolts have both goalies healthy, and I don't need him at the NHL level, so they placed him on waivers. Now, given the fact he was signed just recently and he's on the younger side of things, he's basically been a long-term AHL goaltender. Unless someone was in desperate need of some goaltending help, I thought there was a really good chance Halverson would clear, and that's indeed happened. Halverson did clear on Friday, so not too surprised there, and he will be sent down to the minors, so that's an interesting waiver placement there for Tampa. Then we saw 3 players we placed on waivers on Friday. That was Santeri Hatakka in New Jersey, Anthony Richard in Philly, and Colin White in San Jose. Now, for White in San Jose, he had recently just been signed. He was playing mostly in the AHL affiliate of San Jose before he was signed this year anyway. He got into a few games with the San Jose Sharks after they signed him, but now the Sharks really got a couple of bodies back, as we just talked about Dellandrea, so they didn't really need him at the NHL level, so I placed him on waivers. Anthony Richard was one of a few call-ups the Flyers made after they traded Frost and Farabee before Kuzmenko and Pelche got into the lineup. Well, Kuzmenko and Pelche are now ready to get back into the lineup, so they didn't need Anthony Richard anymore at the NHL level, so they placed him back on waivers. Whereas for Santeri Hatakka, he started the season on season opening injury reserve for the Devils. Devils has a really deep D core. They don't need Hatakka at the NHL level, so they placed him on waivers. And I thought there was probably not very many teams who would take Hatakka, given the fact he was coming off of an injury that kept him out the first part of the season. White was just signed. Any team could have signed him, so I thought he probably would have cleared too. And Richard, I thought maybe if a team really needed some bottom six help, could claim him, but I thought he would probably wind up clearing too because he's mostly an AHL forward. And all 3 things happened. White, Richard, Hatakka all cleared earlier today, so not too surprised there, as I think all those guys are more AHL players than NHL players at this point in time. So Hatakka will go to the Devils AHL affiliate, Richard to the Flyers, and White to the Sharks. And then we saw 2 more players we placed on waivers earlier today. That was Vladislav Kolyachonok in Utah, placed on actual waivers for purpose of contract demotion, and that was Jesse Puljujarvi placed on unconditional waivers for purpose of contract termination. So Puljujarvi had a couple of really good stints last year in Pittsburgh, but this year he really hasn't been able to find the fit that he did last year. He's been bouncing around. He had some opportunities at the top 6 level, had a couple of bottom 6 opportunities, been a healthy scratch a couple of times this year. Really hasn't fit well in Pittsburgh this year, so him and the Penguins have agreed to mutually terminate his contract. If he does clear, which I think he would, given the fact it's unconditional waivers, he'll be a UFA and can sign wherever he wants. If he somehow winds up being claimed, we'll see, but I think there's a really good chance he'll become a UFA and sign wherever he wants. As for Kolyachonok, it seems like Utah's getting a little bit healthier on the blue line. There's a really good chance Thursday gets back in the not too distant future. They already got Marino back, so with them getting some more defensive adds on the blue line, they don't need Kolyachonok at the NHL level anymore. Now, he's a solid young defender who looks like he could eventually be a solid third pair defenseman. I think there's a possibility as a couple of teams could claim him if they're looking for some younger third pair defenseman. I wouldn't be overly surprised if he did clear, but I also wouldn't be overly shocked if he was wound up being claimed. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there, but I think there's a very likely chance we could see Kolyachonok be claimed, so we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But those are all the waiver updates from our past couple of days. Kolyachonok is on waivers for Utah, Puljujarvi is on unconditional waivers for Pittsburgh, and then Brendan Halverson in Tampa, Anthony Richard in Philadelphia, Colin White in San Jose, and Santeri Hatakka in New Jersey have all been placed on waivers and all clear waivers and are all back in their team's respective AHL affiliates. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. Next, going over to one small trade to discuss here before we get into the trade rumor portion of the video. It wasn't an overly big trade, and it was a very small one, sort of like the Sean Walker one we talked about in one of our recent videos. And that is that the Vancouver Canucks have traded depth defenseman Mark Friedman to the Nashville Predators for future consideration. So after the recent acquisitions of guys like Pedersen and Mancini, the Canucks really did not need another defenseman, so they moved off Mark Friedman. Opens up a contract spot for them, opens up a tiny bit of cap space, so an interesting move there from the Canucks, but Friedman is now no longer a member of the Canucks, and they don't get anything back in return for him. Meanwhile, for the Predators, this could be a decent depth add. Friedman does have NHL experience. He's 29 years older now on a 1-year deal at league minimum. He's playing 5 games at the NHL level this year, putting up no points, and also has a goal and 6 points in 20 AHL games. Last year, had an assist in 23 NHL games, and also had 4 points in 4 AHL games for Vancouver, so he's not the greatest of defensemen, but he's shown that he can be a serviceable 6th, 7th guy and a call-up option at that. I'm not sure if he'll be anything in Nashville, but given the fact there's a possibility the Preds could move 1 or 2 defensemen before the trade deadline, if they can have Friedman to be called upon, if they do trade a couple of guys, don't get NHL guys back, and they want to have someone who can fill in the roster spot at the NHL level, I think Friedman could be a really good pickup there for the Predators. So it's a small deal, not something that's going to be overly significant, but Friedman, who's a decent call-up option and has an NHL experience, has been dealt by Vancouver to the Predators, where he could get a little bit more playing time than he has this year in Vancouver, and in exchange the Canucks get future considerations, open up a little bit of cap space, as well as a contract slot. So an interesting trade from the Canucks and the Predators. And lastly here, here going over to a couple of trade rumors. So going over to a couple of trade rumors, we got a couple of things to talk about here today. First, the Dallas Stars. Last week, we did see the Dallas Stars make an interesting trade, acquiring Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci from the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a first and fourth round pick that could turn into a third. It was an interesting trade, and it helped the Stars add some more depth. It helped them get their Sagan replacement, as well as add some blue line help on the blue line. Well, according to Elliot Friedman, they may not be done yet. He says that they still have around $5 million left in cap space to play with, given the fact that they still have some LTIR space, and there's a very likely chance they're not done making moves. Now, he thinks that there's a very likely chance they'll target someone on the blue line, preferably the right side to target if they do try and make some more moves. But we could definitely see Dallas Stars still remain busy. Not sure exactly what they'd be willing to part with. Like, they don't have their first round pick in this year's draft anymore, so would they be willing to trade any of their picks for next year? Would they be willing to trade some of their lower end picks for this year? Would they be willing to trade any of their top end prospects like Leon Bichelle, who was apparently linked to San Jose before they made that trade with Granlund and Ceci? I'm not exactly sure what they'll do, but we know that the right side is a little bit of a weaker side on the blue line for the Stars, and there's a very likely chance they could try, if they find the right piece, to try and improve it. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there, but I think there's a very likely chance that we could see Dallas make some sort of a move. I'm not sure if they'll leave some LTIR space available beyond the trade deadline, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But Elliot Friedman says with them still having around $5 million left in long-term injury reserve space, there's a very likely chance that we could see the Stars make some sort of a move before the trade deadline, and they may not be done yet after the Granlund and Ceci deal, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. Going over to the Carolina Hurricanes, this was an interesting one, and I'm not sure if it's even going to happen, but Nick Kyrepros was speculating on the Carolina Hurricanes, and he says that Mikko Rantanen needs to be signed by Carolina Hurricanes soon. He says that the Canes cannot give up Martin Necas to let another pending UFA walk. Like we saw last year, they acquired Jake Guentzel, gave up a whole bunch of pieces, gave up like a second round pick and another pick, and like 3 of their top end prospects to Pittsburgh to acquire Jake Guentzel, and then Guentzel walked as a free agent when his contract expired. And Kyrepros says that they can't do the same for Mikko Rantanen. Kyrepros says that owner Tom Dundon doesn't want that sort of thing, just like the Guentzel situation last year, to happen again. So Kyrepros says that they basically have a month to sign him, and if Rantanen is not signed by the March 7th trade deadline, expect trade rumors to percolate again with Mikko Rantanen. Now, Rantanen is a solid player. I'm not going to say with any sort of certainty that he will be in the market again, even if the Carolina Hurricanes do not extend him. I'm not going to say that because he's been a really big piece for the Carolina Hurricanes, although after acquiring him, he's only got 2 points in 6 games, hasn't looked right in the Carolina organization, so it'll be an interesting situation to watch out for. If Brandon signs an extension before the March 7th deadline, absolutely nothing could happen, but if he doesn't, is there a possibility we could see the Carolina Hurricanes flip Mikko Rantanen at trade deadline? It's a possibility. I don't think it's a likely possibility, but it could be a possibility, especially with the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes don't want to let another big pending UFA walk, just like they did last year with Guentzel. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Rantanen. There's a possibility he could wind up getting flipped at this year's trade deadline. Next, going over to the Anaheim Ducks, according to David Pagnotta, he says that the Ducks have not shied away from taking calls on Trevor Zegras. Zegras is an interesting name. I've talked about this over the past year, ever since Zegras' name came up on trade rumors. He hasn't really done overly well since the Ducks got their new head coach last year. He's been in and out of the lineup due to injuries. He hasn't really had a great season this year offensively. So Pagnotta said that even though he hasn't had a really good offensive season, and they would have left him to do so they could drive up the trade interest and trade value, he says that they are still taking calls on Trevor Zegras. There's a possibility we could still see Zegras trade. Now, I'm not sure how likely that is, especially in season. Zegras is still a really good player. He's still got, I think, this year plus next year before he becomes an RFA. At this point, with the way things have gone over the past year and a half, I'm not sure if he would want to sign as an RFA, but his value is pretty low after the injury-riddled season he had last year and the not overly great season he had this year. So we're going to have to keep our eye on Zegras. I wouldn't be overly shocked if we saw his name in trade rumors leading up to March 7th trade deadline, or even if him being traded, but it's going to be interesting to see that even though he hasn't had a great season, the Ducks are still taking calls on him. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with Zegras, but Pagnotta says that there's still a possibility he could get traded because even though he's not an overly great season, the Ducks are still taking calls on him, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. Next, going over to St. Louis's Brayden Schenn. According to Darren Dreger on the recent Dreger and Ferraro podcast, Darren Dreger was talking about the St. Louis Blues and mentioned that Brayden Schenn is a name that's starting to come up in trade rumors. It sounds like Schenn's name is started percolating at this point in time. The Blues are not in an overly great position. They're, I think, under 500 right now or at 500, and there are a whole bunch of points level playoff spot. It would take a miracle run for them to get into that last wildcard spot, especially with Vancouver now playing a lot better than they were before. So it would would take a lot for the Blues to get into the playoff spot, and even a lot more to get them into the contention for a playoff spot before the trade deadline. So according to Darren Dreger, he says that we know that Doug Armstrong is not a person who shies away from making a bold move, and if their team's not doing good, he could definitely make a bold move. Like we talked about this a while ago when they were in a playoff hunt. They traded Paul Stastny. I think it was back 4 or 5 years ago now. It was a while ago, but still, they were in a playoff spot and they traded a key pending UFA. So now Schenn's not pending UFA and he's their captain. So apparently it sounds like they've put a big price tag on Schenn, and it won't move him if they don't get that price tag, but it does sound like they're at least open to the idea of potentially moving him, and they would be considering it. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with Schenn. I'm not saying he's going to be traded. He's their captain. He's a good piece of that team, solid second line center for that Blues team, so I definitely don't think there's a very likely possibility he will go dealt, especially before this year's trade deadline. But hearing his name in trade rumors is interesting. Any team, I think, in the NHL, if they could get the Blues to retain maybe a little bit of money, would love to have Schenn, who's a playoff hardy player, as like their second or third line center, and would really increase a lot of team center depth. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that, but Dreger does say that he's hearing Brayden Schenn's name in the rumor mill, and there's a possibility we could see out there that the Blues move their captain. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the New York Islanders, according to Marco D'Amico, who put out a tweet recently talking about the New York Islanders, he says two things. The New York Islanders are trying to sign Brock Nelson on a 3-year extension, and the New York Islanders have made defenseman Noah Dobson available for trade. Now, according to Yamako, he says two things. One, the Islanders are currently trying to sign Brock Nelson to a 3-year deal. A bridge deal I don't think would be the worst of ideas for the Islanders, but like I said before, the odds are really stacked against them to make the playoffs. It would be smart for Lamoriello to at least move off his pending UFAs and get some assets in return. We know the Islanders do not have the greatest of prospect pools or draft capital, so if they could try and move off some of those pending UFAs and get some of those things in return, it would make sense. But we know that Nelson's a really good goal scorer, probably one of the only good goal scorers on the Islanders team. He's been a really good veteran leader. He's like their solid second line center, can put up 30 goals a season. So I can see why they would want to keep him. 3 years would not be overly bad. I would have to see what sort of an AAV they're offering him. If they're offering him like maybe $4.5 million, I wouldn't be overly surprised if that would be a smart move there for the Islanders. If they're offering him like $5.5–6 million, I don't think they should do that. But it's an interesting pickup there. Like we talked about, Nelson's a really big trade interest. So if he signs that new deal, that would take a big name off the trade bait board. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there for Nelson, but Dobson is a lot more intriguing. To make their top defender available is quite surprising. Dobson didn't have an overly great season this year, but last year, or I think it was the year before, one of the last 2 years, he had a 70-point season. That is a really good talent. I know he hasn't had the greatest of past couple of years, especially this year, but still, he's a really fantastic offensive defenseman. I know he's entering the final year of his deal. He's going to be an RFA in the offseason. It might be a little bit difficult to try and sign him, but still, Dobson is an unreal talent. So if they are willing to move him, it's interesting. Now, D'Amico said in that tweet that they will only be willing to move him for a scoring forward, a top-end guy. So teams that come to mind that could use a right-shot defenseman who maybe could have something like that would be a team that maybe Winnipeg, maybe Vancouver, the Oilers come to mind, the Leafs, maybe the Senators. Like, there are a couple of teams out there. Actually, I think there would be quite a lot of teams out there who would love to have a top 4 right-shot defenseman like Dobson in their lineup. And given the fact he's an RFA, they could sign him to a long-term deal, and he could be with that team for a long period of time. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. It surprises me that they might have made Dobson available. Now, I think that they should probably keep Dobson and make him their highest-paid defender. But still, it's an interesting pickup there that could wind up happening. So, interesting note there, but the Islanders apparently have offered Nelson a 3-year deal and want to keep him. And for the right price, they've said they would make Dobson available. So, it's an interesting trade rumors from our past couple of days. So definitely, if you guys thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. What are your opinions on all of this? Does Dobson get dealt? And if so, where could he go? And do the Islanders sign Nelson? Could Schenn get dealt? And if so, where could he go? Do you think that Zegras gets dealt? Where would he go? Do you think that Rantanen could be flipped by the Hurricanes. Personally, I don't think so, but is a possibility. And do you see Dallas Stars making another move, potentially for a blue liner? Definitely let your thoughts on all of that. Plus the injury updates, waiver updates, and small trade we've seen from our past couple of days. Definitely let your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. I want to like this video. If you guys don't subscribe below, thank you all your support. We know to love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. And don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below. I'd love to discuss these things with you. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. Leave a link in the description below. And come and see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.